What do you make to it?
So what do I make of it? I really can't forgive Boris Johnson for locking the country down. I can't believe the vast majority of the House of Commons that wanted to do the same thing, including, of course, just about everybody on the committee that was investigating Boris Johnson. So in that sense, I think this is very much a kangaroo court. Because they're all hypocrites. That's what I think. But some of the things that they brought in, I mean, trying to strip him of his parliamentary pass when he's no longer an MP, that is just vitriol. That's just spite. There's no doubt about that. And 90-day suspension, that is unheard of. I had a look back at parliamentary records. I got back as far as 1949. Nobody's been suspended for anything like that amount of time. The most anyone's been suspended was 30 days, arguably for stuff that's more serious. So there's a sense, I think, that the people who were
you had the old washing machine salesman.
Yeah, he got...
Remember him? Keith Vaz, to give him his correct name. He was pretending that he was a washing machine... I think it was an industrial washing machine salesman. He was quite precise in his antics, that's for sure. Anyway,
yeah, so can't forgive him. Partygate was a disaster. How dare they sit there, send police after us, drones to catch walkers, cancel our Christmas, fine kids for having snowball fights. How dare they when they were sat in Downing Street partying? Totally wrong, absolute hypocrites. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this is just spiteful and vindictive.
Yeah, this notion of kangaroo courts, right? I'll tell you my problem with it. It won't surprise you, Kevin, to know I've got a few problems with it, actually, but I've only got till 7, so I'll summarise them. My first point we'll all be familiar with, Harriet Harman, the chair of this investigation. I can't think of any walk of life, right, where you can chair an investigation into something, into someone, if you've previously tweeted or spoken publicly slamming and castigating the person that you're supposed to be investigating. So Harriet Harman, if you've not seen these, I'm going to just play them on the screen. She was basically tweeting multiple times, saying stuff like, are they going to challenge this? It's not just any old laws, but these are essential to protect even more people getting affected. These were the laws that they've gone on and broke. So she did the verdict before she was even appointed. How is that impartial? It's not.
Well, there's a very worrying tendency today to try and make allowances for Boris Johnson's behaviour. Harriet Harman is, yes, the chair of the committee. She was one of a number of members. The majority of the committee was a Conservative majority. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So it's his own peers that judged that Boris deliberately misled the Commons, misled the committee, he breached confidence in parliamentary processes and procedures, and he was compliant and he actively supported vitriol and abuse directed at members of Parliament. So, and Harriet Harman, she was declared as part of the committee beforehand and Boris didn't object. And Boris said everything was fine with the process until it found him out to be a scoundrel and a liar, right? And the families, I am more interested in what the families of the bereaved who had to live a certain way, I believe it was necessary during lockdown, Suzanne doesn't, OK, to get this country through the COVID crisis. And Boris, there's no kangaroo court. If Parliament, which has got a Tory majority, doesn't like this, vote it down next week.
Well, he makes a good point. I mean, so in response to this, everybody, it's just not possible, I can't read it all out, he's come back with a response. It's about 16,000 words. But he pulls out, so many different aspects. And one of the things that makes me chuckle, he's saying, basically, that at 21:58 p.m, they say in this report that Boris Johnson saw an event going on. And he kind of goes on and he says, how do they know what I saw? What retinal impressions have they somehow discovered that are completely unavailable to me, he asks. And he's got a point. How do they know what he saw? You don't.
But it's correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, it's 108 plus pages, this report.
It is.
You've just pulled out one quote.
That's a quote from him. That's his response to it.
His response. What he's doing, and he's not the only one, Jacob Rees-Mogg has been at it, is throwing out all this noise to deflect. What's important about this report is honesty in public life.
And
tell it, one second, Suzanne, I won't interrupt you. I won't interrupt you. It's honesty in public life in the chamber of the House of Commons. Whether you're Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, SNP, don't lie.
But it was
to
a
Parliament.
predetermined outcome. This is my point.
No, it wasn't.
Of course it was.
No,
Harriet,
it wasn't.
I've just put it up on my screen. I've just started reading about Harriet Harman believed that he was guilty before she took the job of a 14-month report process.
No. All politicians had on that committee have got previously expressed views in politics. It's a quasi-judicial process. They brought in extra reinforcements from outside, respected legal figures. And what's going on now, which is why Angela Rayner is right to talk about Johnson as a Poundland Trump, is an attempt to discredit a process which is apolitical, because it's Conservative MPs trying to reclaim honesty for their party.
OK, so if Labour MPs like Angela Rayner are trying to stand up for democracy and honesty, what did she say today? She said that Boris Johnson should never have been Prime Minister. What a ridiculous thing to say. Boris Johnson had one of the largest majorities we've ever seen in the history of politics in this country. He had the universal support of the electorate, which is how he became Prime Minister in the first place, against the odds and in a very fair campaign. To say something like that, I'm sorry, she's the one that looks like a pound shop idiot.
No, she isn't.
Well, that's what she looks like by saying something so ludicrous.
Well, what
does
she say? He should never have been Prime Minister. She's not. Nobody would dispute he won fair and square a mandate from this country.
Well, then she shouldn't have said that he should never have been Prime Minister.
He's been shown to be unfit by his own actions.
Well, so have several Labour MPs.
No.
Have people like Tony Blair.
Stay on point.
He should never have been Prime Minister, arguably.
Boris Johnson, well, returning around the country from decades of Tory failure, I'd argue
taking us into a failed war that's led to absolute catastrophe.
Let's keep it on Boris. We'll do Tony if you want. But basically, Boris Johnson, what Angela said was he's been shown he's let people down. Even his own son. Tory MPs are more upset about this than some Labour MPs.
Let's look at this whole, because one of the things when you read some of this, I think first and foremost I feel very disappointed about the absolute state of politics in this country, because I feel a little bit like I'm watching my child have a bit of a fallout with people in the nursery playground, because for 1 minute it was going to be a 10-day suspension, but then because he said some mean things about the process, then they were going to recommend a 90-day suspension.
He doesn't respect anybody, Michelle.
Well, I wouldn't respect someone that was investigating me that had already declared me guilty.
It's not just Harriet Harman, is it? Is it Bernard Jenkins? Is he the same?
Yes,
other Tories?
Well, that leads me nicely on to Bernard Jenkins, because now the allegation, of course, has come out that he was at a party for his this one was for his wife's birthday, apparently, everybody. Now they're saying that they want the police involved in that, as though the police have got nothing else better to do with their time. This whole kind of, you can't have your pass anymore. They're going to be voting on Monday, of course, which, by the way, is Boris Johnson's birthday on Monday, but that's when there's a free vote to look at some of this stuff. But now they're kind of saying, we're going to take your pass off you so you can't come back in. It's like, shut up. How old are you all?
Well, no, it's showing he disrespects Parliament. I mean, I think broadly people are so tired, and all the names you've mentioned there, Bernard, people are so tired of a Conservative-inflicted soap opera on this country. We're just tired of it.
But do you think it's a Tory-inflicted soap opera, or is it actually people that cannot bear the fact that actually some of the oiks in society stepped up? A lot of them turned out actually to vote in the last election when they didn't previously, because they connected to and resonated with Boris Johnson.
I am an oik.
They didn't like that.
Oiks should be listened to, Michelle.
Yeah, but they didn't like that. And from the day that Boris Johnson crossed that threshold, they were having none of it. Also, as well, the big fat B word, we've not mentioned that one, everybody, because some would argue that this was, a whole conspiracy theory to try and get Boris out of the door so that you could try, Suzanne, and reverse Brexit.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. And obviously somebody like Bernard Jenkins was very much in favour of Brexit. So I don't think you can certainly lay that at his door. But for me, it is, again, I think, in part, a continued Brexit argument. There is no doubt the Labour Party absolutely hates Boris. He is everything they hate. He is a successful, well-educated, privately educated man who has enormous...
What's he been successful at?
He was a successful journalist. He's a successful author.
Sacked from the Times for making up quotes.
He became Prime Minister. You cannot say someone who becomes
for
Prime
lying
Minister
about his personal life by Michael Howard.
This country is not successful.
He's not.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was
from your
successful at.
perspective.
And I bet he makes the Labour Party's knees shake, because what he was successful at is converting people that were previously absolutely in bed with Labour. He turned them into Tories.
Yeah.
I mean, people like that I know in Hull and places like that voted Tory. I would never have said that they would have done that. And it wasn't Tory that they were voting.
No.
It was Boris Johnson they were voting.
And Boris Johnson, important to say, won an election fair and square. I said, has he been a successful Prime Minister? No. And does he make Labour's knees shake? Well, if I read that question in the way that you mean it, he is a good communicator. I will say that the Labour Party, which I'm a lifelong supporter of, did not help ourselves with our leader at the last election, Jeremy Corbyn. So Boris was lucky, but his luck's run out. Happy birthday, mate.
Yeah, well, we shall see. We shall see. I want your thoughts on this. What do you make to it all? Do you agree with Boris Johnson when he basically says this is a long-winded political assassination, or do you just think actually his time has come, he's been done fair and square? And what do you make to this whole punishment, do you reckon? By the way, why do you even have a pass to the parliamentary estate if you're not an MP anymore? Can you imagine? I don't know about you, but do you leave your old job and then still go hanging around the staff canteen? If I was doing that, if I got fired or left from here and I was hanging around, I'd expect either A, to be regarded as a bit weird, or B, to be turfed back out again. Why do they have that in the first place? Your thoughts on all of that when I come back.